how it got into the sugya. Basically, how it got into, basically, what we are discussing over here is this picture. In this picture over here, there was an opinion, let's call it Rabbi Yossi, who said that you put the inside, the intestines and the legs inside the goat, and then you roast the goat. So the Gemara got into the discussion, but you have a problem over here. What is the problem? You didn't salt the meat that's inside. This is like a stuffed meat. You put meat within meat. So the blood leaves the inside and goes into the outside meat. It goes into the goat itself. So how is that kosher? So the answer is, the Gemara says, Kiboiloi kach poltoi. As the blood leaves the inside intestines and the feet that's somehow lodged in the inside, it comes into the blood, goes into the outside meat, and then drops into the oven. And then, so we got to discuss that. And then we discussed, just to close up what we discussed yesterday, is we're talking about, they used to make like a dough with meat inside of it and roast it together. So the Rav ate that meat. He liked the dough very much. So the Gemara wants to understand, how did Rav eat that dough that was surrounded the meat that you roasted? There's blood in that dough. So the answer is that it was a certain type of dough that was crumbly, is that the word? And therefore the blood left the meat, went into the dough, and then came out. So the Gemara gives you the rule, the halacha. The hilkasa, this is where we left off. The hilkasa, I think this is Daf Ayin Daled Amud Beis, about 1, 2, 3, about like 12 lines from the top. The hilkasa, the halacha is the smida, the dough. If it's crummy dough, then you could assume that all the blood came out. Bein asmik, even if you see a little reddish tinge in the dough, bein loy asmik, whether you don't see a reddish tinge, of course, then if there's no reddish tinge, that's certainly sharia, that is okay. Because even if you saw a reddish tinge in that dough, that's not really blood. Like sometimes we discussed this yesterday, that you cut a chicken a little bit and you see it's red. That's not the blood, that's usser. So that's just, it's called moihel ba'alma in the language. It's like a red juice. The Gemara continues, if the dough is like if it's like the flour is the chivarta, it's like a dough made of like fine flour, that there it traps, the dough is thick enough, so it's very thick, it actually traps the blood. It doesn't even let the blood leave. So if that is the outside piece of the surrounding the meat, then you have to make sure that there's no juice, any juice that comes out of that dough has to be totally clear, because we assume that any reddish in that juice coming out of that dough is blood. If it's as clear, like glass, like a white coin, I don't know, a white coin, a certain type of coin that had no reddish tinge to it, then sharia. Ilai, if it has a reddish tinge to it, aser, then it's aser. Because we assume that reddish tinge is blood, because this type of dough traps blood. But the shar kamacham, rather other types of dough that's in between. So then you see asmik, if it's very red, aser, then it's aser. Loy asmik, if it's not red, very red, but it's like it has a tinge of red in it, it could still be shari, it's still mutter. Then we discussed hai mu yasa. This was the stuffed meat. In other words, you have a chicken and you stuff meat into it and you roast it together, let's say. So some say, like I said before, some say this is usser because the inside meat will drop blood into the outside chicken. So it doesn't matter if the chicken is facing with the mouth bottom where the blood can potentially drop down, it would still be usser. So manda usser, those that say it's usser filipuma latachas, even if the mouth is down. Uman share, and those that permit it, afila puma le'el, even if the mouth is facing upwards, they permit it. Even according to the Manda Oma that says it's usser, but our little Pesach, carbon Pesach, is certainly mutter, because there the cavity is very wide. So certainly the blood of the inside drip directly down. But what we're talking about here, it's not so open, and therefore the potential of the blood to go into the outer cavity, the outer chicken or whatever, that's the reason why they hold it's usher, even if the mouth, even if there's a way for blood to drip down. The hilkasa b'talacha remains mul yishusari. Stuffed meat, stuffed chicken is permitted with roasting it without salting. Obviously, this is all talking you didn't salt it. Even if the mouth is upwards, because we assume that the fire is going to draw out the meat, the blood from the inside meat to the outside meat, and from the outside meat drop and take it out into the fire. New Gemara, umtza. Umtza is a very interesting. Now, I want to point out to you, I think you might notice this, may realize this. Ancient times, they used to eat raw meat. Even raw meat, technically, you could eat it without salting, because the isser of blood is only if it moves from place to place. If it's in the original spot where it was, then it's no isser of the blood, only if it moves. The problem, what we do, the reason why we salt is because we normally cook meat and the blood moves from place to place. So therefore, then it would become usser blood. So here, we're talking about umtza, raw meat that actually had blood that coalesced there. Probably there was a wound in the animal, and that piece of raw meat looks very red because there was like a wound there. So blood, extra blood from somewhere else came there. And then bei is the testicles that had maybe also a wound and other blood came there. Umizrike are the veins of the animal that it's like the big jugular veins that's near the Beis HaShchita. So all these things the Gemara is going to discuss how to roast them and what's the halacha. So first of all, the Gemara tells you a side point. Pligi bar Rav Acha Ravina. Rav Acha and Ravina had a disagreement. Wherever you say, the Gemara is going to say, B'chol HaTorah Kula, all of Shas, Rav Acha l'chumra. Rav Acha is always the stricter one. Ravina l'kula, and Ravina goes l'kula. So the way to remember it, the ches is chumra. Rav Acha is always strict, even though it's anonymous. We don't know who said what. We always assume that Rav Acha went strict. The hilchasa, the halacha would be Ravina l'kula. You'd always go to Ravina l'kula. You go lenient. But levar mahani tlas. The following three arguments you should know. You don't know who said what, but we know the tradition is that Rav Acha went l'kula over here. Rav Acha went light, lenient. Ravina l'chumra. Ravina was more strict. The hilchasa the halacha will be in the following three cases. Rav Acha l'kula. You go like Rav Acha and you go lenient. So what's the Gemara saying? What are the three cases? Again, hai umtza. This piece of meat, raw meat, the asmik. Asmik means there's blood that coalesced there. So if you cut it open and you let that blood out, and you salt it. So then I feel like you could cook it. That's simple. That's what everybody does. Shpade bashapude, if you roast it over a fire and you put a little bit of salt. Rashi holds that even if you're roasting something, you have to put a drop of salt. So we say it's permitted. Meidev doyev, the water, the liquid, the blood drips down. Rashi says, look, meidev dayev, shapidomi, af melech ma'at b'toret sali. Even if you're roasting something, you have to give a little bit of salt. Now the Gemara, and this is the major discussion. This is the discussion. But if let's say you took achte agumre, you put it on coals, so it's not roasting over fire like you see by the carbon Pesach. You put it flat on a coal. Then does that draw out all the blood? One says it's also v'chat shori. Manda also, one that says it's also matzmis somes. It causes the blood to shrink and it cauterizes, it traps the blood. If you put it on a coal, it traps the blood actually. Manda shari, no, the one that says if you put it on coals, it's also okay because mishav shoyev, it draws the blood out. The hilchasa, the halacha is mishav shoyev, it draws the blood out, and therefore it's good. It's kosher. V'chein bei, the testicles. Chatchiu umalchinu, if you cut it open and salt it, afilu l'kedei shari. That's permitted. If you cut it open, take out the loose blood, you're allowed to salt it and cook it. Tolini b'shabida sharim. If you put it on a spit and roast it over fire, it's permitted. Made of dye, the blood drips out. Achtina agurme. But if you cut it open and put it flat on coals, on hot flaming coals, then pligi ba Rav Acha Ravina. Rav Acha Ravina have an argument. Chad also v'chad shari, and remember Rav Acha is the one that permits it. Manda also one that says it's also matzmis summit. When you put it on coal, you're shrinking the meat and you're trapping the blood. Manda shari, one that permits it, mishav shoyev, it actually draws the blood out. The same argument existed by the jugular veins. Near the base of shchita, it has a lot of blood. If you cut it open and salt it, then you're allowed to cook it. Talia b'shabude, if you put it on a spit, base of shchita latatoy, but make sure that you have the opening where you made the cut facing downward, so the blood drips out. Then it's shari. You see, the Gemara adds that point over here. Made of dye, then the blood will drip out. But if you put it on coals, it causes it to shrink. What the Gemara is saying is that if the halacha remains that you could put it on coals, you don't necessarily have to, roast it over the fire, directly over the fire. You could put it on hot coals, and according to one opinion, and that's the way we paskin, that it will also cause the blood to come out of it. Another piece of Gemara, not so easy to understand. But hi umza, again, back to this raw meat. The aspic that has a reddish, the aspic that had blood coalesced there. So, and you roast it. So the meat is okay. But the Gemara says that chalya osir, the little juice that comes out of it, the first juice that comes out of it is osir. And if it's the aspic chalya, if the juice is red that comes out of it, then it's osir. Loy asmekalia, but if the juice is not red that comes out of it, shari, that's permitted. You roasted it, so you would think that all the blood came out, but the Gemara still has like a strictness to it that if you see some red juice coming out of it, that red juice is still blood, and therefore it's aser. But if it's not red, then it's permitted. Ravina Oma afilu loy nam asmik nami chalya shari. Even if you don't see any reddish thing coming out of it, any reddish juice coming out of it, chalya aser, the juice that comes out of it, that remains aser. So it's a funny thing, and Taisus has a difficulty understanding this way that Rashi is learning. The meat, you can eat the meat, but the juice that comes out of that meat, that is aser. Right, because the after the lace by shiryake bama, it's impossible that it doesn't have a little bit of blood in it. Amalei Mar bar Meimar l'Ravashi. Mar, the son of Ameimar, said to Ravashi, Abba, my father, Ameimar megamale agamui. He actually would swallow this juice that comes out of this type of umtza. Ikida Amri, others say Ravashi gufe megamale gamui. Ravashi himself would swallow this juice that coming out of this umtza, this raw meat. Again, so because once you roast it, obviously the juice that's coming out after you roast it is not blood anymore. Now it says the Gemara a new thing. Amalei Mar bar Meimar Ravashi. Mar bar Meimar said to Ravashi, Abba, my father, that means Ameima, Hai chala de cholet lebe chalet zimna tu loitani cholet lebe. They used to have a method that even after they roasted the piece of meat, they would drop it into vinegar, and vinegar would like cause the excess blood to come out. We're not familiar with that vinegar, how it draws blood out. But they had a way that even after you roasted meat, there's a concern of still a little bit of blood, and therefore you drop it into vinegar. So he says the vinegar that you used once for one piece of meat, you can't use it again because it loses its potency. So the Gemara says, what would be the difference? A very weak type of vinegar, we use it as a scalding mechanism to draw out blood. It's not even a very weak type of vinegar we use. So why can't you use one vinegar that's strong twice? In other words, imagine a tea bag. So you use a tea bag, it's a good tea bag, you'll use it twice. You'll use it for one cup and then use it for the next cup. So, but if it's a weak tea bag, if it's a weak tea bag, you could still use it for once. So the Gemara is asking, if it's a strong vinegar, why can't they use it twice? So the Gemara answers, Hassam, by the weak vinegar, Isa lekiyuah de peri beina. You could even though it's a weak type of vinegar, but the tartness from the fruit is still existent. Somehow chemically, it has a potency to draw out the blood. Hacha, but even a strong vinegar, once we used it to draw out blood, there is no potency, there's no tartness from the fruit here, and therefore it's not usable as something to draw out blood. Like I said before, I'm not familiar with using vinegar as something to draw out blood. I'm told that this has nothing to do with drawing out blood or something like that. This was used to preserve meats by salting it. They used to actually salt meats if you wanted to keep meat for a long time. So if you just drop it in salt and put it in a vessel, then the blood comes out, but the meat will be puzzled because it's sitting in its own blood. So they added vinegar to it, and that somehow prevented the blood from going back into the meat. But anyway, we'll move on. The Mishnah said, "Ein tzaylen es Pesach." You're not allowed to roast the meat on this grate, right? On this grate. But then the Gemara says there was a story from Rabbi Gamliel, and he told what? He told his Tavi, his servant, go roast me my carbon Pesach on the grate. And it was permitted. Wait, you just got through saying you can't do it. Maisa Lister, the story contradicts what you said. You said you're not allowed to use a grate to roast your carbon Pesach because it's not directly over the fire. And then you bring the story that it is permitted. After the Gemara, the Mishnah is missing a few words, and this is what it's supposed to say. If you use a grate that has a hole in it. Now, what's a grate that has a hole? Take a look at this picture. The grate over here has just, one or two lines across, down, and then it's open. So basically, the whole meat is not on the grate, but it's actually directly over the fire. So it's what we call a holy grate. So that's permitted. The Amar Rab Tzaddik said, yes, a holy grate is permitted. Go roast us a carbon Pesach on this holy grate. Now the Gemara continues. New Gemara. Rav Chanina bar Idi, Rav Ada bar Abba. Rav Chanina bar Idi asked Rav Ada bar Abba, Tanur shehesiki beklipi ara. Let's say nothing to do with carbon Pesach. Now we go into a new idea, but we always come back to carbon Pesach. Imagine an oven that you lit the whole oven with the shells of arla. So this oven over here, right? So forget about carbon Pesach. You lit it with the shells that's the fuel to fuel the fire was the shells of arla. So if you cook up bread in this oven, obviously it's not good because arla you're not allowed to have benefit from. So the Gemara says, so he says, but what happens? The grafoi, you swept away all the shells of arla. So now you don't have twigs of arla in there, but you have the residual heat from the original fire that you had there. And that fire was started by arla. So it's a derivative of arla, va'afal by a pas. And then you bake the bread in there. The divrei ha'osa mahu, according to somebody who would aser, if you had the shells of arla inside, what happens if you remove the shells? The shells of arla. Amalei a pas muteris. Then the bread is permitted because the arla is not in the fire. It's only a derivative of what came from lighting up the shells of arla fruit. So the pas would be mutter. Okay. Amalei. So Rav Chanina told Rav Ada bar Hava, but I have a question on that. Amar Rav Chanina Sava, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Chanina said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Taner shehisikoi. Let's say you have on carbon Pesach, you fired up a oven, right? Ugrafoi, and then you cleaned out all the wood and the hot stove. Utzalabayas a Pesach, and then you roasted a meat, the carbon Pesach. So in this picture, imagine you lit a fire over here with wood, made the oven hot, and then swept away all the wood and the fire. What you left is with a hot oven, and in that way, you roasted a Pesach. Is it good or not? And you said to me So it says over there, Ein zet sli eish. That's not called roasted by fire. That's called roasted by the oven. Shenamar, because the pasuk says sli eish, shtei pa'amin. It says the word sli eish. It has to be on the fire twice in the Chumash. So therefore, that's why that's not a good roasting of the carbon pesach. Now, the Gemara has an inference. Timer the galer rachmanat sli eish shtei pa'amim. It's only because the Torah said the word shli eish twice. That's why I say that's why it's no good. It would be called eish, but the Torah specifically wants you, the carbon pesach, to be directly affected with the fire, touching the fire almost. So that's fine. But if the Torah wouldn't tell you that, right? Havamina, it would work. Tzli eshu, that even if you moved away the fire, even if you moved away the fire with the wood, that would still be considered tzli eish. It would be a kosher pesach. It would be a kosher roasting. So what do you see? Even after you remove the fire, even after you remove the wood with the fire, it's still called being burnt by the fire. So if so, let's apply it by the tanner that was fired up with klipe arla. It should, even if you remove the klipe arla and you bake a bread, the bread should be usher, because nevertheless, this oven is heated up by arla fruit, by arla fuel. And that therefore, according to the Man Yoma, that's yeshvach eitzim bepas, this pas should be usher. Amalei, so he's simple. He answers, Gali Rachman Hasam, V'Alfina Minah. The Torah taught you over there by carbon pesach that a heated up oven of a derivative of a fire is not considered eish. V'Alfina Minah. And that's how you learn everywhere else that it's not a derivative of fire. And that's how I would learn possible terrorists, because this is not considered being baked by klipe arla. It's being baked by something else. And therefore, it's only because the Torah told you by carbon pesach it's not considered eish. That's why everywhere else in the Torah it's not considered eish. V'ima yasema, and if you want I can tell you, the Gemara gives you a nice teretz over here. And this is a teretz that you might have thought of yourself. Hasam, over there, by carbon pesach, Taima, the Kosa Rachmana Tzli Eish, if the Torah wrote Tzli Eish, Shtei Pamin, Hal Loi Kosa Rachmana Tzli Eish, but if the Torah did not write Tzli Eish twice, Shtei Pamin twice, Havamina, I would think, Aish Kapid Rachmana, that the Torah wants you to be, the carbon pesach, to be roasted by something that came from fire. Even if you swept away all the wood with the fire, still the eshu, that would be considered a fire, because it's a derivative of fire. If you look at this oven, what's making the oven hot? The fire. So even I would think that even after you remove the wood with the fire, that's still considered roasting the meat on the fire. The Torah, that if the Torah didn't write Sliyesh twice, I would still consider that being baked, being roasted by fire. But here it's a double derivative. Aval hacha, certainly it's permitted. Ha'etzim the yisura kakapad rachmana. V'alesnayu. The Torah isser of arla is because you're using wood, and here you have the wood, that you have the klipe arla that makes the fire, which heats up the oven. So, and then you remove the wood with the fire. So there, it's a double derivative that cannot be considered fire anymore, so to speak. And therefore, if you bake the bread that way, that even if you hold normally, if the arla was inside the oven, it would be aser. In this case, hapas mutaris. The pas would be mutar. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Let's say you cut the carbon pesach and you placed it on coals. Wow, interesting. You put it on your cold barbecue, directly over coals. Is that considered roasted or not? Rabbi says, I think that's called sliyes. So the Gemara asks a question. Did Rabbi say that gecholim is fire, that coal is fire? And this is the rest of the sugya that we're going to deal with. Is coal, a flaming coal, a fire, right? Is this considered a fire? So the Gemara says, I mean, it's not, I don't think it's there's flames coming out of that coal. I think it's just a very hot coal. Is that considered roasting the meat? So Rebbe said it is. So Rav Achtave asked him a question to Rav Chizda. Did Rebbe say that coals are fire? I'll ask you a question. The Torah says that if you have a nega over a burn, that's considered a certain type of nega in the Torah, right? If you have a burn and then a white blotch comes, or michvas basar chai by eish, the Torah says that is considered a nega. So michvas eish. So the Torah says eli al shnichva beish. I don't. It's only if it got burnt, but you got burned with a fire. Nichva b'kachelis, if you got burnt with a coal, beremetz, or with ashes, besid reseach, with lime that's hot, begispis reseach, with gypsum that's hot, b'chol davar b'min or anything that got hot through fire, latuye chami or even hot water. If you got a burn through hot water, menayin. Well, how do I know that is considered like eish? Talmud loyma michva riva. There's twice the Torah says michva. It's marba all these things that are not like are not. They don't look like fire, but they're considered fire. So the Gemara says, "Time the Rabbi Rachman michva." The only reason why we consider them fire is because it says michva twice. Holoi Rabbi Rachman michva. If the Torah did not write michva twice, gecholim lav eishnenu. Gecholim is not considered fire. So back to Rebbe. How did Rebbe say you could like butterfly open and obviously you don't cut it to pieces, but you could butterfly it and put it on coals, and that's considered roasting your carbon Pesach. From this Gemara, from the story that we see by Nega, we think gecholim, coals, are not considered fire. Amalei. So from that Amalei, the answer is like this: Gechelis shall eitz li'tzokro l'arbuye. If it's coals coming from wood, certainly that's considered fire. Hot coals that's made from wood, that's considered fire. Ki itzrakra like a cheles shel metchas. When do I need the pasuk to be marba that it's a coal is considered fire if it's a hot molten metal? A hot molten metal, there you need an extra pasuk to tell me that is also considered like eish. So the Gemara says the kecholim shel metcheches lav eish. If it wasn't for a pasuk, you would think molten metal is not fire. Well, gabi bas kohen, it says when you kill a daughter of a kohen. Remember, if a man or a woman does nus, the misa is chenek. If they're an ashish ish, a married woman that does nus on purpose, b'mezit, she gets chenek. But if she's a daughter of a kohen, the Torah gives you a special type of misa. She gets the misa of be'esh tisarv. She gets burnt on fire. She gets sreifa. What does sreifa in the Torah mean? You heard of skila herek sreifa chenek. What is the sreifa misa? They take hot molten lead and they drop it into her mouth. So we see the Torah says that she's supposed to get burned. And how do we burn this woman? We burn it by making her drink hot lead. So we see that hot molten metal is considered fire. Answers the Gemara, Shani Asim over the years different. The Torah says the word tisareh, the extra word tisareh, could have said be'esh, it says the word burner. The rabbis call sreifas aboyis me'esh. It's marba, any type of fire, any type of things that burns her that comes from fire. The koshkein eitz atzma, certainly fire itself. But the Torah says you can mekayim the mitzvah of burning this woman by using hot molten metal, and there's an extra riboy for that. Without that riboy, I wouldn't consider that fire. So the Gemara asks a question: once you're talking about killing a woman, let's wrap her with twigs and burn her. Why do you have to go make her drink metal? We have a Gzeira Shava that says, just like, but when the sons of Aharon were killed, the Torah tells you that their neshama was burnt, but their bodies remained intact. Afkan, so also over here, Shreifas neshama v'guf kayim. When you kill a person, when you kill this Bas Kohen, you have to only burn her soul, but make sure the body stays intact. So if that's the case, so the Gemara asks another question. Let her drink hot water. That's more of an agony for her to drink hot water than to drink hot lead, where she dies right away. And for the Gemara, Rav Nachman. When you kill somebody, you have to kill them with the most quickest way. And therefore, you don't make her drink hot water, you drink hot lead, and she'll dry faster. So the Gemara asks the question: if we have Rav Nachman, then what do we need the Gzeir Shava? choose something that burns her very quickly, which is hot lead. After the Gemara, Omri, the Rabbanan answered, Ilav Gzeir Shava to Bnei Aharon, Hava Mina, Sreifas Neshama V'Gukayim Lav Sreifa. Making her drink hot metal wouldn't work because that's not called Sreifa. Burning her Neshama and keeping the body intact, that's not called burning a body. Kamash Malam the Gzeir Shava, that it is burning the body. What do you need, Rav Nachman? You do need Rav Nachman once you know that you're burning the body. V'imishum the Rav Nachman. If it was just Rav Nachman, then if you just had Rav Nachman, then Nepesh Lachavilas Maris Tuvo, just bring a lot of wood and burn her very fast. That she should die very quickly. If you just had Rav Nachman, then burn her. And the Torah wants you to burn her very fast, then just make a quick fire and throw her into the fire and be done with it. Kamash Malan, that we know. The Torah doesn't want you that the body should burn. The Torah wants you two things. One, that we want to keep the body intact. The Bas Kohen's body should not be burned. Only her neshama is taken away. And yet, we want her to die fast. The only way we accomplish both is making her drink hot lead and not hot water. So the Gemara says, why did the Torah write you burn her in fire? You're not giving her fire, you're giving her hot lead. You don't take lead from when it's mined from the ground, where it's hot because you mined it. You have to make the lead hot through a fire by warming it up on fire, not having lead just mined from the ground. Amalei Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rab Zera. So Rabbi Yirmiyah challenges Rab Zera. Wherever you're going to say the Torah says burn it with fire, that means you can use anything, any type of fire, any type of heat that comes through fire, that's also sufficient. While the Torah says there are certain cows carbonates that you bring, that you totally have to burn them. You have to burn them on the fire. There's no part of that carbon that's eaten by the kahana. Burn it up. You burn it on fire. You don't use hot lime and hot gypsum. So therefore, how could you say that whenever it says ba'esh tisaref, the word tisaref is marba other things? Here we see by Parman and Srafin, it doesn't marba. Amalei, so he answered, how could you compare? Hasam kseb bu'esh v'hada tisaref. The rabbis called sreif al-bois machmaseish. By the Bas Kohen, it says bu'esh tisaref, fire, burn her. Burner, if the word tisaref is a riboy. Hacha, but over here, ksib v'soraf, first it says the word sreifa. V'soraf oisal eitzim ba'esh. Burn the carbon on the fire. Lapsoif eish, first it says the word sreifa, and then it says eish. So remember, it comes to teach you the eish and only use fire. Midachrina loy. So you can't use anything else. That's why param and esrafim, it's not, you can't use anything else. So the Gemara says, Hasam name ksiv sreifa l'psoif. The ksiv, it says, we go to Amid Beis, Ayin Hema Beis. Al Shefach Hadeshen Yisaref. The Torah says that you should take the param and israfim and you burn it where you have a bunch of ashes from other karbanos. So there it says Yisaref at the end. So why don't we say this Yisaref is marba, that we can burn it with other ways, not by fire, by hot gypsum or hot lime. Amrei. So we say, we need that Yisaref for something else. Yisaref, alpha pishain shadeshin. You could burn it in that place where you pour the ashes, which is, outside the base of Mikdash, they would pour all the ashes of the karbanos in a certain place. Even if there's no ashes there, you burn this type of chatas, param and israfim over there. Or Yisaref, burn it. Alpha pisha hits us by orbaruba. Even though the fire, you burned most of the animal, you still have to burn the animal completely. You have still a mitzvah to completely burn the animal. So this Yisaref is used for other things. So that's why we can't use it to be marba, burning it with hot gypsum or hot lime, because it's used for another drasha. Bottom line, here's the bottom line. The bottom line here is Rebbe said that if you take a carbon pesach and you put it on coals, Rebbe said that's called tzli eish. That's considered roasting over fire, even though it's not like, hanging over a spit on fire. Putting it directly on coals, that's good enough. But the Gemara asked the question over here, but from a nega, we see that kacholim is not fire. So that was one teretz. We danced around a teretz. There's extra ribuim, but Ravina gives the simple teretz. That brisa made a mistake. You have to bind it all together. That the word michvas eish includes anything that's even a coal is considered fire. This is how you read the brisa. I only see a nega that you got burnt by touching your hand or whatever in fire. Ubakachelis, and you got burnt by a coal. Then that's where you put the camel. There, that's considered eish. The simple understanding of the brisa is that kachelis, a coal, is considered fire. So that's in line with what Rebbe says, that kachelis is considered fire. A coal is considered fire, so it's li eish. When the Torah says roast the carbon pesach, it could even include roasting it on a clove. But that's what the brisa means to say. But nichva beremet spesid with reseach, with hot gypsum, hot lime, b'chol davar abach machasora latu yechame, or even hot water. How do you know that is included? The mikvah is marba the other things, but not gachelis, because gachelis, the simple meaning of a coal, is fire. Rava Rami. We're going to try to jump to the Mishnah. Rava Rami. Rava had a stira subsukim. Umi Omer Rebbe. Did Rebbe say gecholim ikru eish, that a coal is considered fire? That the word coal is considered fire. Again, that you could roast your carbon pesach by dropping it on coals. Uraminu, I'll ask you a stira. The Torah said, where else do you in the Chumash do you see that you have to use coals? Is by Yom Kippur, when the Kohen Gadol takes a shovel full of coals and goes into the Kodesh Kodashim with the Keteris. So the Torah says, fiery coals. If the Torah would gachale, the Brisa says, if the Torah would gachale coals, yochel aimabais, I would say you take a dim coal, Talmud loima, eish. The Torah says use a fire. Eish. If the Torah says use a fire, yochel shalheves. I might think use a flame fire without a coal, right? Talmud loima gachale, use a coal. Hoketzat. What should you do? Maybe haloichashois. You bring a whispering coal. It's not a dimmed coal. That's not hot, or it's not a fiery coal or fire, but it's a whispering coal. So the Gemara says v'hagufa kasha. So the Gemara just house cleaning on the brisa, and to explain the brisa. Amrit, the word you said got the word gachle alone. If it just said the word gachle, a coal, yochel aimamois, I would think it means a dull coal, a smoldering coal. I would think that gachali means any type of coal. Alma, so we see from there that the word loichashes, like a whispering coal, eishnunu, is considered fire. If it's a hot coal, that's considered fire. That's not including gachale. So ema seifa. Let's look at the end of the brisa. Eish. If it says the word eish without gachalim, yochashal heves, I would think that you take a regular flame. Talmud loime gachale has to be a coal. Alma afilu loichashes. Even Talmud loime gachale. Alma, so we see from there that the word eish means afichlech leichashois, even if it's a hot coal, lav eishnim, that's not considered fire. So we do house cleaning, and Rav Sheshes explains the brisa. Amar Rav Sheshes, hochiktani. This is what the brisa means to say. Gachale, the word gachale, coals, yochel, bein oimois, bein leichashois. I might think that the word coals includes whether a smoldering coal or a whispering coal. That's called gachle, but it's not called eish. Talmud loime eish, use a fire. Eish, if the Torah says use just a fire, I would say yochel shal heves. I might think it is a flame fire. Talmud loime gachle, use a coal. Okay, it's that maybe min aloichashes. You bring a coal that has some heat to it. So mikol makem, whatever this the way Rav Sheshes learned the brisa. Gecholim loy ikre kesh. The word gecholim, coal, is not considered a fire. A gachal is not considered eish. It's just considered a coal, but it's not considered eish. So kashi Rebbe, this is a question of Rebbe. Rebbe said a hot coal is under the heading of eish. This is because, again, I'm just going to bring up the pasuk over here in this chart. Rav Sheshes said that the braisim, if it just says gachale, it includes oimamois and leichashois right over here. includes these two. The word that means the word loichashosh means is a hot coal is only a coal to coal. It's not called eish. That's why the Torah wrote eish shalhevis, and because it wrote if the Torah just wrote eish, I might think you take a regular flame. So therefore, it take loichashosh like a whispering coal in between. But the word loichashosh is not a eish. That's what the Gemara is trying to say. So it's a question on Rebbe. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi, Abai said, Turitz Hachi. This is how you answer up the Baisa. The word Gachale means only oimamos, yochel oimamos, v'loy loichashosh. A smoldering coal, but not a whispering coal. It's not a hot coal. Talmud loima, eish. The Torah says, I don't like a smoldering coal, I need a hot coal. E eish, if it just says fire, yochel rotza shalhevish, you should take a regular flame fire. Yochel rotza gachelis, you should take a coal. Yovi, you could bring either one. Talmud loima, gachale. That's why it says use a coal. Okay, tzad. How do you accomplish both? Maybe min aloichashes. You could only bring. You don't have to bring a flaming coal, right? But you can bring a loichashosh, a whispering coal, which is a whispering coal is considered eish. That's what we're saying. A whispering coal is considered eish. That because it has heat, it's considered like fire. Now the Gemara just wants to explain. Amar Rabba. Rotza gachelis yovi, rotza shel hevis yovi. What is the price? What's the havamid of this? To say that you could bring a flame. How are you bringing a flame if you don't have any fuel? If you don't have a coal? Shel hevis b'lei gachelis heichem mishkachafla. How is it possible to have a flame without a coal? After the Gemara, kagoin shvaya lemana mishcha. You smear the pan, the kohen's pan with oil. V'itle bei nura, and you put a fire there. So the Gemara says, and that's how the Gemara had a havim in it. That's the way the kohen should come into the Kodesh Kodashim. He has a choice to come in, even with just a flame coming out of a pan. So the Gemara, that's what you do in the circus. What do I need a pasuk to tell me that that's not proper? For a plain king, you certainly don't walk in with a flame coming out of your coming out of a pan, maybe in a Japanese restaurant. But Lifnei Melech Basar V'Dam, you certainly don't walk in there. Certainly, Lifnei Melech Malchei Amlach Makash Baruch Hu, you certainly shouldn't walk in there. Ella Amar Rava. So Rava says, and this Rava is answering that this brisa should not be a question on Rebbe. Rebbe said that the hot coal is considered under the heading of fire. So how do you interpret that brisa? Turitz Hachi, this is how you say the brisa. Gachale, the Torah says to bring a coal. Yochel oimamois, I might think that the kohen should bring a smoldering coal. V'loy loichashosh, not a whispering hot coal. Talmud loy me'esh. The Torah says you bring a fire. So it has to be a hot coal. Eish, if the Torah says fire, yochel yovi mechza gacheles umechza shalheves. Have a coal that is half a smoldering coal and half a fire, a flame fire and a smoldering coal. And therefore, ad the oil legaboy, until you enter inside the Kodesh Kedoshim, avekula gacheles, then it'll all be a very hot coal. So how do I know? No, that when you take it off the mizbeach, it has to be a hot coal, not a cold coal, let's say, a smoldering coal, and hot on one side of it, and by the time you bring it inside, the whole thing becomes hot. It has to be a hot coal taken off the mizbeach, and I guess he has to walk pretty quickly to get into the Kodesh Kedoshim. You should take off the mizbeach a pan full of hot coals from the time that you take it off the mizbeach, it has to be hot coals. Again, so bottom line is that Rebbe is still holds true that one could take the carbon pesach, put it on hot coals, and that's considered like tzli eish. Hot coals is considered eish, and you would still be accomplished what the Torah wants you to do, roasting meat. One more last thing, iboya lehu. How do you spell the word oimamois? Oimamois with an aleph or oimamois with an ayin? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, arazib loy amamu began elekhim. The cedars were not dimmed because it was the cedars that were brought in the base Mikdash were not dimmed from the other from the other wood that was brought from the garden of Hashem. So the word dim is smoldering is spelled with an ayin. So we see you spell oimomois with an ayin and not with an aleph. Okay,
Oh, thank you. That was a lot.
sorry, that was
Good.
a lot, but we had to accomplish to the Mishnah because that's where everybody's.
Yeah, shkoch, excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
Shabbos,
you.
everybody.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Take care.